Hey, what's up guys, this is Save, and this is going to be the top 5 support mistakes in the early stages of the game. So the first one we're going to talk about is inefficient time usage, specifically in the early stages of the game. So some examples of inefficient time usage would be when support heroes would go and roam around, and this happens a lot, especially in the early stages. Your support hero is going to be moving around the map looking for opportunities to rather kill or just reinforce some lanes. Now, this can be really felt as a waste of time sometimes, especially if you're going there and getting no results. If you're going there and dying too, at times you're going to feel like you're wasting your time, especially because if you're roaming inefficiently, you're going to become underleveled. You are very limited while you're roaming on ways to actually get resources in the form of experience and in the form of gold. So one good way to actually cut this inefficiency down is to actually plan ahead and try to really weigh out your options. See what hero you are and see the components of it, like if you have an ability that's able to stun, or if you have Tusk's Ice Shards, which is a really nice ability, especially in the early stages of the game. It's a very long CC. Now see what you have with your teammates, how your abilities compare with them, and then ultimately see what the enemy team is looking like, and try to plan out the scenario in your head and try to work it out and see how it would work. Well, if I go to mid lane against an invoker, let's say, can I actually get a kill here, or am I just going here and wasting my time? Now, if you're not really thinking it through so much, you might just instinctively go there and just try to get a kill and hope for the best. But if you actually really try to analyze it and think about it, you might weigh out your options and be like, well, if I do go mid, there's a very low chance to get a kill. But maybe if I go into the off lane, I actually might have a chance to kill there. So like I said, going back to the inefficient time usage, to minimize this, really try to refine what you're thinking and really try to play the scenario out in your head. See the resources that you have as a support based on your spells, movement speed, items, this and that. Pair it up with your teammates in the early stages of the game. Well, how do their abilities fare? What do they do with mine? And then ultimately add those together and then see how you would put it against an opponent in the laning stage, and then see if there's actually an opportunity to kill there. Now, just by visualizing it and putting it together, it's going to help you make a better decision on if these things are actually a possibility or not. And in the long run, this will make you a lot better with using your time more efficiently. So another mistake that I see supports making is everyone does a relatively good job of getting the initial wards out, the first two at the start of the game, but it seems that as that set goes down, I find that rather wards don't get placed out right away, or they get placed without a sense of direction or a sense of purpose. So what this means is, and how to minimize this, would be as you place your first set of wards, those are going to be very general, very easy. You might have a ward to protect your mid laner and maybe see the rune, and then also you might have your other ward used to maybe defend the off laner, or how about your safe laner. But regardless, once those wards drop at around the 5 to 6 minute mark, you need to think about the next set of wards. Now, just having them out is fine, but having them out with a plan is what you're ideally looking for. Now, you connect these two together by seeing how the game is going currently and seeing where you can go objectively next with your vision, whether it's something as simple as, alright, my mid lane is going to be pretty static, I'm just going to go ahead and drop a ward still revealing into the mid lane, and then also maybe giving vision of a rune ward simultaneously. That way, going on to the further stages of the game, the 6 to 11 minute mark, you're still going to be protected in your mid lane, and also you're going to have vision of the runes. Now, something more objectively that you'd be able to do is go for wards aggressively, maybe overseeing a tower on some sort of high ground or plateau area. That's going to give you full vision, unobstructed vision of a tower. That's going to allow you to posture up and take a tower. Now, this ward would be completely synonymous with you going and actually aggressing the tower. Like, you already had this planned out with the intentions of doing this. And that's exactly what you're going to be looking for. Not just having wards set up after just to have vision, but having wards that have purpose and making sure they come out timely. Alright, so another mistake is going to be pulling ineffectively or pulling at the wrong time. Now, some examples of this would include if you're going to go ahead and single pull a camp, instead of stack pulling or actually chain pulling. And if you actually don't end up doing one of those two, this will inevitably end up pushing the lane, which will be very detrimental to your early game, and it will also give the enemy laner a ton of experience and gold ultimately. Now, another way that this can be done ineffectively is if you're going to be pulling when the lane is already under your tower. So for example, if your carry is already farming the creeps underneath your tower and you go to pull, he's just going to have a hard time CSing that and actually tanking it. He's going to take a lot of damage. And on top of that, the enemy offlaners are going to identify that a creep wave never came. And since your carry is tied up with farming, he's not even going to be able to rotate over to help you if your pull does get contested. So there's a lot of things that make you very vulnerable, and a good offlane player will notice these weaknesses and definitely capitalize on them. Now, another ineffective way of pulling is pulling when it's destined to fail. Now, for example, if you're playing against a really strong offlaner, or you just don't really have such a strong safe lane combo coming up with you and your heroes in the safe lane, or you're playing against multiple heroes in like a dual offlane setting, or even against an aggressive tri-lane. If you're going to go pull, and when it's quote-unquote destined to fail, that means that if I go ahead and try to get this pull, the moment they identify that a pull is happening, they have the units and they have the resources to come walk over and actually stop it from happening and, CS the creeps, maybe CS the neutral creeps, and, they would end up getting more out of it. And also on top of that, they'd be getting the creep equilibrium set to what they want, which is basically just getting as much experience and as much gold as they can. And if you're going to be doing something that messes it up, that's going to be directly feeding into giving them gold and giving them experience. So another very common support mistake that I see is zoning inefficiency. Now, what this means is some people don't really know the full parameters to what pulling creep aggro is and how that directly correlates with zoning. Now, as a support hero, if you're a very long-range support hero, or if you're something like a silencer that has an orb that you're able to attack, then you're pretty golden with zoning. Now, if you're a melee hero or someone with shorter range, you're going to have to be a little bit more crafty and selective on when you're actually zoning. Now, this is going to be very hero-specific and very matchup-specific how it's going to actually go, but some good things to keep in mind to help you zone a little bit better would be that if you're a ranged hero that has decent enough range to right-click away from the actual aggro zone, then go ahead and come in from the angle that leads you furthest away from the creeps. Maybe you're coming from the side where an offlane hero is just playing with, the range creep in the back. Go ahead and right-click him from like the left-hand side or right-hand side, or even potentially, behind the creep wave where he's postured by the range creep. Just have to be careful with actually drawing the range creep itself. Now, if you're in a more scenario where you're a melee hero or a shorter range hero, it's going to be a little bit harder for you to actually aggress this hero, because as you right-click him, you instantaneously are going to mess up the creep equilibrium. Maybe you're not going to fully mess it up, but you're going to draw the aggro 100%, which can lead you susceptible to actually messing up the creep equilibrium. Now, if you're doing this with a plan or intent of harassing and potentially killing, then it's completely fine. Or harassing so you can actually zone the offlaner away from the creep wave, and then after that going for a pull after it to reset the creep wave, I think that's completely fine. But you need to make sure that if you're zoning and you don't have it as easy as being able to zone him from far without the aggro factor, then you need to be thinking of, if we mess up this creep equilibrium, are we going to get a kill? Are we going to be able to zone him out of the lane and force him to go to the jungle? Or are we going to be able to zone him so effectively that even if he is getting some experience and some gold out of it, I'll be able to pull it back and reset it, and then the actual damage and the regen that you've taken away from is actually justified and worth it. Alright, so the final mistake that we're going to talk about is rune control. Now, especially in the early stages of the game, this is when it is very useful. This is going to be predominantly for our position 4 heroes and our position 4 players. Now, how this really plays into is, what I see from time to time is runes get completely ignored, sometimes not even checked. And I've done a good amount of coaching, and I've just played a whole lot of Dota in my time. So I've seen this be ignored a lot, and I'm not sure why it is. Maybe because everyone's so fixated on the bounty runes or just playing the laning stage. But I feel like a lot of the time the power runes are ignored, And as a roamer, a power rune will allow you to have an opportunity that should never be there for one, and also usually is not expected. An example of this would be if you're playing Tusk, for example, and you pick up an invisibility rune, it'll allow you to set up in such a way that you would never have an opportunity to do before, even if you had a Smoke of Deceit, because you'll literally be able to play on top of the enemy hero. Now, if you're able to do this and transition that invisibility rune into a kill on a core or something like that, that'd be great, and that is probably the most ideal scenario that you can get out of it. But the whole thing comes that this opportunity would never be available if you never were proactive about actually controlling the runes to begin with. Now, to be fair, it could just be an illusion rune, and you potentially might have wasted your time on going all that way to get it. But regardless, I think that the whole potential that if you just check an area and have an opportunity to get such a power up like that and transition it into an opportunity, I think it is definitely worth it to keep these in mind. And definitely as a roamer, utilize these a lot more. And as you get the rune, make sure you don't play passive with it. Try to find some purpose with whatever kind of rune you're getting dealt. If you get an illusion rune, you might think it's useless, but you can stack 2 camps with it. If you get a haste rune, you might think it's not too good, but that's a free trip back to base if you're low, and then you could just TP back in. So there's a lot of purposes for it as a support, and also, if you're feeling generous, you'll be able to secure those runes for your mid laner if he goes bottle or something like that, and be able to keep his sustain up, and also be able to power him up a little bit.
Alright guys, thanks for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, and I'll definitely get back to you.